Live homes.
This is with Mik Scarlet in episode 1. So let me get this straight. All humans are weirdos. Weirdos are important to talk to. Therefore, is it weird to be human? Or is it humans are important to talk to? Or am I mixing up my philosophy? How in all of this can I know how to be more like the humans? I'll tell you how. Philosopher and founder of Modern Stoicism John Sellars will tell me whether I have the courage, wisdom, moderation and justice needed to be stoic on this turbulent planet.
Well, hello, John Sellars. Like I said, I'm this alien entity that has been just sent from our Galactic Federation to land on this planet. I've been sent here because there has been a report of a glitch and it's coming from this planet, and I'm down here to try and investigate what the root cause is for this glitch. And so far I've come across quite a few issues that humans have seemed to have caused to themselves. Like, for example, why do you humans have roads with no stairs just so they can be accessible to anybody? Or how is it that a bunch of people on top get to dominate what happens to everybody else at the bottom of society? And how come people seem to be a little isolated and alienated from each other? And then I came across this architect who told me a lot more about spirituality and how humans believe they come from the stars and therefore have translated their beliefs into architecture, but then somehow some cultures like the West somehow have forgotten their sort of more spiritual belonging in this world. But then again, I came across your book on Stoicism and Epicureanism, and I thought, okay, well, maybe John can explain to me a little more about the book. And because the thing is, where I'm from our galaxy, we don't have this thing as philosophy. Why have you got it here on this planet?
Okay, thank you. Yes, so what is philosophy and why do human beings have it? I suppose the way in which we tend to think about philosophy today, or the way that I'm most interested in it, is an idea that goes back to Socrates. So Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher, presents himself as a lover of wisdom who is in search of wisdom, right? And by wisdom, what he really means is the knowledge of how to live a good human life. So he kind of feels that he's not living a good human life and that he could live better. He could do a better job at living than he is. So he is looking for knowledge. He's looking for knowledge and guidance that will teach him how to live a better life than the one he is at the moment. So that's, if you like, the core idea, we might say.
So then, if this human of yours wanted to live a better life, what life was he living before that then?
That's a very good question. I suppose, a lot of people today, and I think this was true for him as well, don't really know what they're doing. We kind of go through the motions of living our life. Some things work out and we sometimes repeat those things, but we don't often know why it is we're doing the things that we do, right? We don't necessarily have a clear understanding of why behaving in one way is better than behaving in another way. One of the key thoughts that motivated Socrates was, if you really know what you're doing, if you're a real expert, right, then you can consistently do it the right way every single time, rather than just kind of guessing and doing it through a process of trial and error. So I think that to get beyond just trial and error in life and to really know, so to gain expertise in how to live well.
Okay. Well, so as I was going through your book, one of them, the one on Stoicism, I thought that it sounded very poetic the way you said philosophers are doctors of the soul, and that philosophy is the hospital of the souls. But can you give me concrete evidence that this still is valid in your 21st century society?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing about a lot in 21st century society is the idea of mental health, right? So we're all familiar with the idea of physical health, and if we get sick, we go to see a doctor who can repair our body. But for quite a period in the 20th century, health wasn't quite at the forefront, and people just got on and didn't necessarily deal with what problems they had unless they were extremely serious. And so more recently, people have started to take the problem of mental health a bit more seriously as something that we ought to pay attention to. And that idea goes right back to Socrates, who again will insist, well, the quality of our lives is really determined by our mental health, not our physical health, right? If you're the perfect athlete with an incredible body in perfect shape and you go to the and you're a fantastic physical specimen, but your head is a mess, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to live a good human life. And so maybe the key to living well is in fact mental health, not physical health. And perhaps someone who's got really, really good mental health, even if they work very well, perhaps they're disabled, perhaps they've got limited mobility. If they've got the right mental health, the right frame of mind, they too can still live a really good human life, right? And that's an interesting shift from the ideas in the culture was living way back in the beginning, right? Where so if you, our alien visitor, go to visit a museum, you'll see lots of Greek statues, which are perfect forms of human bodies. There was a great stress on physical prowess and athleticism in the culture in which he was living. And so he wants to shift the focus and say, well, that's all very well, but perhaps it's the mental health that's more important. And so that's why he says we need doctors that can treat our minds as well as doctors that can treat our bodies. Okay. So that's where this idea of doctor of the
I agree. So do you think that people forgot to be doctors of the soul for a period of time and decided to shift their focus on material things and forgot what their role was supposed to be?
So, I mean, that's a very good question. I think after the end, that period of Greek and Roman culture in which these ideas flourished, we see the rise of organized religions such as Christianity, and during those cultures, religion takes over that role, right? So your local priest is the doctor who will look after all of those concerns, and he'll give you ethical guidance about how to live, and you will go to him and confess your sins and all of your problems, right? But in more recent years, we've seen the decline of organized religion. Okay, so what's happened is that religion slightly in some contexts, and that's created a gap, and people have lost that guidance that they did get for many centuries.
Okay, I was going to say that because specifically for Christianity, I've noticed that there's been a few atrocities being committed by saints, and I think, oh well, as humans, you should not supposed to be doing this to each other. You should be supposed to be, yes, be doctors to your souls to one another. So you see, this is why I keep bumping into more and more people and keep getting even more and more confused about where the whole issue is, and I just keep coming back to humans. It's not really something external or in your surrounding environment or nature, but it's something to do with humans themselves. And I liked how you very, very openly equated nature to God, and how those ancient schools of thought, like Stoicism, consider that to be the kind of belief force. But I wanted to find out a little more about emotions, and how come is it this Stoics believe more in suppressing emotions, but then you got this whole sort of wave of movements today which kind of promote you to be very emotional, how you feel. What do you think is the
Yes.
better one?
So, I mean, maybe there isn't a conflict between those two ideas. So the idea that you kind of repress or deny your emotions and keep them bottled up inside you, I think that's probably a very unhealthy thing to do, and that they'll eventually come back and get you in some way or other. There'll be unexpected consequences. So the idea that you ought to express your emotions and let them out feels like a very sensible idea, right? That feels like something quite important to do. Absolutely. Now, people often use the word stoic in modern English. We might say with a lowercase s, to refer to that kind of repressing one's emotions, right? But the ancient Stoic philosophers of Socrates certainly didn't think that that's what we should do, right? So there's a very nice line from a very eminent academic who's also a good friend of mine. He says, in the case of Stoicism, it's not about gritting your teeth, it's about seeing things different. You don't have to, right? So it's not about repressing your emotions. It's about seeing the world in a different way so that some of those motions don't happen in the first place, right? So if someone's very, very angry, for instance, bottling that up could be very dangerous for them. What you really want to do is for them not to get angry in the first place.
Yeah, can I
So
just
yeah.
can I ask you another very human question? So in your book you mentioned that Emperor Caligula killed Seneca just because he was kind of jealous of him, and don't you think he was against it? Was it?
Yes, yeah, I think it was Caligula banishes Seneca at one point, and then Nero orders his execution. And yes, that's certainly that's certainly an expression of anger for sure. Yeah.
But okay, so these are two humans, each with their strengths, right? If you were to be Caligula, imagine you were Caligula, how would you have dealt with your anger differently, and how would you have avoided your emotion against Seneca? How would you have prevented the disaster?
So, in order to avoid having that kind of extreme anger, what the Stoics are going to say is that you need to change the value judgments that about the world. So, for instance, if he thinks that Seneca has done something very bad towards him, that's going to generate an emotion of anger within him, and then that's going to lead, in the worst case scenario, to violence, right? So, the starting point of that chain of events is the judgment that he's made. Seneca has done something bad to me, right? And so what we need to do is kind of look at those judgments that we make as individuals, the value judgments, and interrogate them and see, are they justified? Should we be making these sorts of value judgments? Perhaps all of the events that take place in the world are just value neutral, right?
Yes.
This is just
could be, yeah.
This is just matter in motion, and we can describe it in a very dispassionate way. And when we start saying that good or one thing is bad or one thing is unjust, this is us imposing our value judgments on the world, and that's a choice. So we can choose how we do that.
Sorry, so you're telling me that Caligula chose not to benefit from Seneca and have a team player and work to whatever collaborative work between them, but chose to get rid of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, see, this is what I'm trying to get my head around, these very human responses and emotions and experiences that influence this planet. Hold on. I understand that Stoicism and Epicureanism are not entirely different, and they're not really. They shouldn't really be in competition. But in your 21st century scenario here, the one I'm witnessing at the moment, how do you think the values of both could contribute to the betterment of society?
Yes, I mean, so these were two different schools of philosophy that developed in Greece around the same time. And in some respects, there's a certain amount of common ground. They're both aiming at the same sort of thing. They're both looking for but they go about it in slightly different ways. So the Stoics are going to say that the key is to develop the right kind of character traits, the right kind of virtues. And if we can develop the right kind of frame of mind, that will enable us to lead a good life. The Epicureans, by contrast, are going to say what we really need to do is pursue pleasure and avoid pain. That's the key, right? And pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain sounds like it's a very physical thing, right? Connected to the body. But in fact, the Epicureans become quite sophisticated, and they say, well, actually, physical pleasure and pain is one thing, but it's mental pleasure and pain that are far more important. And by mental pain, they mean things like fear, anxiety, those sorts of mental health problems. And so that actually, in that sense, their view becomes quite similar to the Stoics. They're both concerned with dealing with mental disturbances, which they think are the most damaging thing for us. And they're also both fairly indifferent about things like external success and money and possession. They both think that those things are far less important than most people tend to assume.
I think the humans should not be concerned with these external things as much. I think seeing what forms of systems are in power, I think that might be that looks like a essential kind of cause of problems in this modern contemporary society.
Absolutely.
That somebody produces something at the cost of another human's life, and that human's life depends on somebody that they might never even meet, but they have their life governed by them and by their needs, and then there are other humans who purchase all these things all at once that they never need, and they also are part of this cause and effect. I think there's just a lot of interconnected networks of external factors that really make all of you humans suffer in one way or another, right?
And the overproduction and overconsumption of material possessions is directly contributing to the environmental crisis that we're all facing, that could lead to us ending up with a planet that is uninhabitable for human beings. So it's a problem that we face, we might say.
Exactly, because I thought humans worship nature just as just like they would worship a god. So wouldn't you be making your god very angry if nature is your god?
Well, evidently it isn't, given how poorly we take care of it.
Okay. Given these, given the fact that both schools of philosophy, Stoicism, and Epicureanism are quite relevant and they're quite useful, for human's life, don't you think that there are people who currently kind of reflect these philosophies, but they call themselves gurus and self-motivating people who are experts and motivational speaking? Do you think there's a correlation between that and the ancient school of philosophy?
I think those sorts of people often pick up some of the ideas the ancient philosophers and then promote them. But a central part of ancient philosophy involves going through the process of asking these questions for yourself and coming to see for yourself that these solutions are correct. And of course, every human being is different, right? We're all unique. We all live in slightly different circumstances. So another key part of the process that people need to go through involves gaining a certain amount of self-knowledge. And that's a reflective process we all need to go through for ourselves. And just, picking up a handful of slogans that someone else has promoted isn't really enough to help us to do that sort of more serious work. So there is some overlap, but I think that turning these directly gives us a lot more than we'll just get from a self-help guru.
Yeah, do you think like a self-help guru is thinking that what they're doing will benefit them more than the rest of the human beings they're trying to help? Do you think there's a bit of a bias, economic bias?
Well, maybe they're just trying to sell something.
Okay, but yes. See, this is where like I said earlier, don't understand why would you want to sell help to someone as another human being if you're both the same star stuff. It's like one bunch of stardust is trying to tell another bunch of stardust, "Oh, you're less of a stardust than I am. Give me some of your money, and then I make you as stardusty as I am." How would you as a philosopher help with that?
Well, yes, I mean, I think people often feel quite lost.
Okay.
And they're looking for answers. And rather than thinking that they need to work themselves in order to uncover the answers that they need in order to live a good life, if someone else comes along and say, "Look, I've got all the answers for you. I've got a ready-made solution to your problems," then that's going to look attractive. That's going to be a lot easier than having to do the hard work of trying to what's wrong for yourself. So you could say that in some cases that's someone just being a little lazy, but in other cases it might be that someone is just so desperate for help they'll take whatever is on offer.
Okay. See, this is why you have to speak to somebody like you, because in the case of Mik Scarlet, the person who was a wheelchair user and who has all his life battled against current very kind of closed-minded system of, towards disability and access, he might be one of those who have actively needed help, but have also been actively providing help to the other humans so that they can easily access this very strange city. Okay, that's interesting. What other philosophies? What other sort of do you agree with, or do you echo, resonate with in your practice?
There are a certain number of key themes that we see across lots of different philosophies that have developed in different parts of the world quite independently. So some of the ideas that we see in the philosophers of ancient Greece, we also find philosophers in India and China also coming up with very similar ideas independently. And that in its interesting fact about human nature and the human condition, right? That people are reaching similar sort of conclusions on their own. I mean, one idea that we see in both China, India, and in the Western tradition is a stress on of things, right?
Yes.
Everything is constantly changing. A lot of the upset that people suffer is by trying to hold on to things too tightly and then being distressed when those things are taken from them or destroyed, or in the case of other living beings, And if you like, not being able to fully accept that fact that things are constantly changing and are transient. And so that, I think, is a very powerful idea. And I think it's really striking that all three of the largest philosophical world have all come to stress that that's a really important idea that people need to sort of face up to.
It's true, I agree. I mean, attachment causes suffering, and the entire universe and cosmos, as you can see, is in constant maintenance and all that. But how would you, with all your knowledge and ideas, can help people understand that better? Humans at some point need to understand that attachment does cause suffering, and they probably need to let go of things that won't even matter the next moment.
Well, I mean, people have been trying to teach this for centuries in different contexts, right? So, yeah, there are many people that have tried to stress the importance of this and try to teach it. I mean, I think in the West, it seems that people find it slightly harder because there have been other ideas circulating at the same time that have stressed the importance of things being unchanging and eternal. And so there's been a kind of a conflict between these different sets of ideas, right? So, for instance, again, in the Christian tradition, that some things might be eternal, or that part of the human being might survive death and last forever. So there you've got this kind of conflict of these different ideas that people are receiving, which makes it all the more difficult for them, and they're more likely to end up being confused.
Okay, so human to alien is. What do you think if I stayed on this planet, if I decided to stay and kind of blend in, what would you advise me to value more and what to value less?
Well, if you want
human planet.
Well, I mean, if you with a typical human being, then you probably want to pursue lots of external possessions. You probably want to be fairly selfish and focus on your own well-being. Really want to blend in. You might not be in the healthiest condition.
Oh, but that doesn't sound like I want to do that. That sounds like a bad model of human. This is not. Yeah, when we go and try to resolve the glitch. Now I'm starting to see why and where the glitch comes from. I don't want to be selfish, and I don't want to be materialistic as a human being. Okay. But then I be an outsider if I don't want to?
Then you might be a bit of an outsider, and to bring this right back to where we start.
Yeah. Oh.
Socrates was challenging these ideas.
Okay.
That made him something of an outsider, and his community had him executed.
Right. Okay. So I will disintegrate the atoms, just like the Epicureans believed.
That's right.
Okay. Interesting. Oh dear. Well, you know what? I'll take the challenge. Yes, I need to stay for a little longer than shit to try and see how to work things out.
Well, here's perhaps one other piece of advice I could give you. So, one of the things that the Epicureans suggested, being well aware of all of these difficulties, they encourage people to live unnoticed. So don't draw attention to yourself. Disappear into the background, and then you won't stand out as the outsider, and you'll be able to live a calm, tranquil life because you won't self. Perhaps that's.
Yeah, live somewhere up in a mountain and contemplate my existence from there.
Yes.
Okay, I can do that. But then the other people. Okay, no, I'll think about it. Okay, you gave me lots of food for thought. John Sellars, thank you. our very humanly earthly meeting today.
My pleasure.
To infinitely and beyond, did I say? To boldly go where no alien has gone before? Me? A gentle alien that validates its three-dimensional existence on a planet so foolish and selfish, so greedy and evil, that even a philosopher of Stoicism would advise the better it is to do as hermits do, and live somewhere up in a cave. But I shall endeavor to continue on my mission. Now that I know that humans can be kind theoretically, I shall look for a human that applies kind in day-to-day life. Up, up, and away!
Live Homes. Live Homes.